Hi, I'm Seamless, and today I want to show you the Choordinator. And so on. So a lot of times, whenever I talk about making chords and stabs and pads and superstars and junk and whatnot, the number one question that comes up is about layering. And my suggestion about layering is that not so much to make several different sounds and play the same chord on them. I would recommend making a big chord and then putting several different sounds on each of your different voices. As you can see in the MIDI here, I'm using the note color system, which is basically just a voice numbering system. For MIDI, it's the channel number, and for internal FL stuff, it's just voicing. This is what they call it. And here in this module, on the top end of things, we have all the controls that I care about when I'm making this kind of thing. And then, I end up not doing this kind of layering because it is a lot of work. But hey, let's make a preset, let's make a patch, let's just actually do that so that we don't have to worry about it again, right? So in the map, whoa, yes, thank you, sound effects. Woo! So it looks complicated, not all that complicated. It's just several lines. It is 7 total voices, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are together. So, yeah, 7. So these are citruses in various different configurations of supersaw-esque stuff. Some of them are just straight supersaw. Some of them are like some configuration of FM that adds up to something that's like a supersaw, but with a little bit of tonal difference. And some things are like not really saws, but have saw harmonics happening, so that it adds up to being something that's like that when it's all together. All these various things that are good ideas in different tones and make different cool sounds for individual supersaws. You do all that for all your different notes, and a couple things happen. Not only does it just sound different and cool once all together, but when you move up and down the scales with different chords, it doesn't sound like you're just moving around different band splits. The universe moves around with you because it's not a per frequency thing, it's a per voice thing. So the voice splitter over here, this is the VFX color mapper, and this is how that whole thing works. What's neat about this, though, is that you actually still can do that other kind of layering. You can still actually just layer together multiple different colors, and it'll come out as if you're playing the whole different chord on both of the different kinds of things. In this case, the closest I've gotten to that is that a couple of these colors have more than one note going on at once, but for the most part, it's pretty monophonic. But it is not set monophonic. It doesn't have to be monophonic. Anyway, there's reverbs on the inside here and reverb on the outside here. And that's what this outside control means, reverb in, reverb out. This is reverb before the one filter that's doing the pluck. It is true that there are 7 different tones happening, but they're all coming together into one filter. And that's being plucked one time. And that's what's helping in a big way to contribute to it still being snappy, despite there being 7 of them. Yeah. So this reverb in guy. What's fun about that is that it adds extra air and depth to things, but it still gets cut away when the filter happens. So that's a neat little effect there. And then there's reverb out, which is after the filter specifically. All of this, of course, before some pretty heavy-handed compression. And you might have noticed I am using Valhalla Room for all my reverb here. I love the Valhalla DSP stuff. I know that's not necessarily stock junk, but if you did just replace these with pretty regular stock stuff, you get pretty close. It's mostly for the fact that there are a bunch of different ones that are making this all kind of feel epic. And this one in post mostly feels the way that it does because of what's coming before it, going into compression. So the compression, what one extra fun thing is happening here is that every one of the compressor's release times are being plucked with the pluck. And the fun part of it isn't just the fact that we're doing that, but the fun of it is that there is a change in the pluck's attack. So you can do the whip if you want to do the whip. The way that I'm accomplishing this is that there is an attack on the pluck. This is what we're looking at right here. This is the filter's pluck. And this attack is what that knob controls. It's all the way off. there is a corresponding pluck in here, and this pluck is for the Maximus. This is where all the release times are being automated from, and it also has an attack that is the precise same length. At least it should have been. Pretty sure it is. Yep. The graphs are just different sizes for some reason, but they are at the same time, which is the whole idea here is that when the thing is in dark territory, despite the fact that the compressor is compressing really hard and generally speaking, really overdoing it, it's still not, there's not like any extra harmonic damage happening because I'm just being compressed very slowly. The release times are quite large when it's not being plucked. You can't really even really see it move that fast. But the whole point of it is that the pluck needs to be sharp, and sharpness is a high frequency event. And if you want a high frequency event to be compressed correctly, it has to be pretty fast. So the whole point, we're automating the times to be appropriate for when they need to be a thing. And what's best about doing it with the whole attack business is that when the whip happens, when the thing needs to be a thing is when the filters are all the way open. Because then it's full frequency, full spectrum, full speed, and you need the compressor to react accordingly. And then when you filter it down, you're in the dark ages, the dark areas, that's low frequency stuff. So if it's too fast, you get extra high frequency stuff that's not as clean. And we don't get the fun of having the reverb before the stuff that we pluck and then it's cut as if it were whole. Cut as if it were whole. I'm sure that made sense. The whole point of these two layers, by the way, if you're curious, is that one of these is just the reverb. The reverb is 100% wet on it. And then the dryness, these are all dry-wet combos. And then the dryness of the regular one is just coming out by itself. I just felt like doing it for that voice. I actually went pretty low key when it comes to like what's going on differently between the voices. The differences are just in the generation phase, and I didn't do things like add delays or phasers and flangers, effects that are usually way too much to put on a big whole sound layer. But if you do it on a per voice basis, it doesn't infect everything. Plus, you get to do fun stuff like individually controlled how loud all your individual voices are. So that's what all this junk is over here. The sub guy is special. So voice number 1 here, these are all the numbers of the voices. We just went through the top guy down to the bottom guy. And this guy is special because he has a sub control. And the sub doesn't just turn down the literal sub frequency that's in the list there. It also turns down some of the other bits in that first voice. But it's still doing stuff, and it is still at that note. So if you have all the other things going on, and you still want to have that bass presence in there, but not the sub presence, you can still do it. Or if you want to have the sub presence, you can, because I designed this thing to be the whole stack, so that if you wanted to, you could use it with like the sub involved. So I mentioned before about the band split difference, because normally if you're doing a big layer thing and you want to have differences in the sound, you instead of doing it like a per voice, you may get something, here's the low frequencies, here's the mids, and here's the highs, but you're still playing the whole chord through the whole thing. It's just that it's cutting off the output of it. The difference is here. Wow, what the hell was I just about to say? So yeah, the difference here is that instead of making like EQ changes, you can just change how loud certain voices are. And it's an effect that I guess is just key tracking, as if you had key tracked on EQ change. But it's so much more subtle and so much more like totally relevant, because if you did have a big long chain of effects and whatnot, it isn't just that the voice that you wanted to turn down got turned down and its properties were turned down with it, but everything else that was part of that part that was too loud also got turned down. And long story short, it helps your phase out a lot. I'm doing a lot of like high passing and whatnot just to keep things like kind of corralled. And then it is being, OTT'd all the way back up. But I don't have to like, there's not really a need for post EQ, because if there's some character about it that needs to be changed, I can alter that about it in here with just changing how loud the voices Then these other controls here are basically the supersaw of it. It's the unison controls. It's the detune and the phase. So you can have any kind of supersaw you want on either like any of these individual voices. Or you can have them all be lasers. So yeah, the Choordinator, a little tool that was made just pretty much to get done what I usually want to get out of a pluck or a supersaw or some kind of pad or whatever. Usually some amount of one of these kinds of things, and then like that's never enough. Just one supersaw is never enough, and then you know that you need to go and do a lot of work to make layering. But this is still just supersaws you're doing, but they can't suck. You can't not pay attention to them. You got to put effort into them. So this is the effort. Here it was. This is the effort that I normally would consider to make a thing to be done. Like, for a saw and a thing that I want to do. And it's just, but now I can just load one of these up and get, halfway there. This is pretty well halfway because the rest of that, of course, is just automating these things to be a thing, in a time, in a track that's relevant to its whatever. Plus I probably put in a lot more regular effects like delays and phasers and whatnot, for fills and whatnot. But for the basic core nature of a thing, here is the Choordinator. There's a link in the description for downloading if you want to have it for yourself. If you have any questions about this, please let me know. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and all that fun stuff. And as usual, have a nice day.